Even I was a victim of the sick games my father called fun.
Even I was a victim of the sick games my father called fun. That sentence, spoken at precisely 8:43 a.m. on a Tuesday morning inside Manhattan's federal courthouse, brought the entire courtroom to a standstill. It was the 30th day of the high-profile trial of Sean Diddy Combs. The media was weary, attorneys on both sides drained, and no one expected the most explosive moment to come from within Diddy's own family. Justin Dior Combs, his eldest son, once proudly paraded before the cameras, wasn't on the witness list, hadn't been summoned. Yet that morning, he stood up without warning, raised his hand, and asked to speak. His voice trembled, his eyes carefully avoided his father's, and within the first 3 minutes of his testimony, the entire room fell into stunned silence. No one took notes, no one asked a follow-up question. The only sound was a sharp exhale from the defense team, right before Diddy slammed his hand on the table, shot to his feet, and shouted, "Stop. Don't let him say another word." At 8:46 a.m., Justin walked to the center of the courtroom, not as a witness, not as a victim, but as someone seemingly ready to tear down the silence that had protected an empire. Reporters stopped recording. A member of the legal team clutched the table. And just a few feet away, Diddy sat frozen as his son began with a sentence that would burn into everyone's memory. "I know there are things I shouldn't say. But if I stay silent for one more day, not just me, but many others, will continue to live in hell." And if someone asked me where it all started, it was the night of my 17th birthday. No one expected it. The VIP room wasn't luxury. It was where the nightmare began. That morning, Justin Dior Combs didn't lay out every detail. He didn't offer direct accusations. But the images he painted, with a voice so calm it chilled the room, spoke louder than anything explicit. My father called that room the real VIP, no cameras, no phones, just older men and blindfolded girls. There were no descriptions of acts, no graphic words, yet that absence only made his words colder. The courtroom didn't see what happened, they saw the reactions of those who had. Diddy looked like he wanted to interrupt but couldn't. His hand clenched so tight his knuckles turned white. The once mighty mogul, who had built an empire, now sat frozen as his own son dismantled the silence with memory alone. Justin went on. He didn't say coercion. He didn't say assault. He simply said he was brought there to learn. After weeks of watching, he too was pushed into what he called the circle. Just that phrase, the circle, sent shivers through the room. No one wanted to ask what it meant. Everyone feared the answer. A woman in the audience covered her mouth. An elderly man stood up and walked out. A senior news producer typed, "Pause the clip. Content exceeds standards." Then came the questions, not asked aloud but etched into every mind. Where was that room? Which mansion held it? How many had entered? Who were the blindfolded girls? How old were they? Were they willing or deceived? And if Justin, the biological son, was taught to observe, who was the teacher? But no one dared speak. No one followed up. Because this wasn't a stranger. It wasn't an outsider. It was a son, the smiling boy once seen next to his father at red carpets and award shows. Now, he was the first to crack that image. Not with accusations, but with memory. The silence afterward wasn't peaceful. It was stunned. The kind of silence that comes when people realize what they've heard might shake the foundations of more than just one man. And still, that was only the beginning. By afternoon, Justin returned with more. "I wasn't planning to open that cabinet. I was just looking for a jacket." But the key was already there, tucked into the groove of the wood. He twisted it. The door opened effortlessly. And I saw everything. That was when the trial, already heavy from the morning, took a darker, unexpected turn. No one had ever mentioned the cabinet until Justin opened it. An old wooden cabinet, fitted with a brass lock and a hidden key slot tucked beneath the grain, quietly sitting in one of Diddy's private residences. It wasn't in the search warrants. It didn't appear on the house's blueprints. Diddy's legal team never disclosed its existence. And yet, it was real. According to Justin, it held full-scale replicas of a world his father had spent years hiding from view. He didn't describe the contents. He didn't offer specifics. He just said, "I saw everything." And once again, it was what he didn't say that chilled the courtroom. A locked cabinet. A misplaced key. A son who stumbled upon something his powerful father had tried desperately to bury. The first question, why was the key there at all? Everyone in the industry knows Diddy is obsessively controlling. Nothing is ever left to chance. From guest lists to playlists, even the shape of the ice cubes at his parties is selected with precision. So how could something this critical be forgotten in a groove of wood? Two possibilities: either Diddy made a rare, unthinkable mistake, or someone left the key there for Justin as a warning, a threat, or a calculated act of manipulation. Justin didn't answer that question. He simply said he opened the cabinet and inside found a carefully organized archive: CDs, hard drives, plastic bins, paper envelopes, and an old Sony camcorder. When prosecutors requested permission to access the cabinet, Diddy erupted. His protest was so intense the hearing had to be paused. He shouted, "There's no such cabinet," only to fall silent when the judge asked, "Then how did your son know exactly where it was, how it was locked, and what it contained?" Now, the central question is no longer just what's inside, but who knew about it, why had it never been searched, and how long had this truth been locked away? If it wasn't in the blueprints, then who commissioned it? Who hid it? And if Justin found the key by accident, how many others worked to keep it hidden? Within hours of Justin's testimony, a special task force, coordinated with the FBI, was dispatched to Diddy's Hidden Hills mansion. No media were allowed. No official reason was provided. But the implications were clear. If the items inside that cabinet are real and hold evidence, this case could extend far beyond Diddy. It could touch celebrities, investors, even political figures. Because if everything includes footage, names, recordings, then who else is in them? And how far would someone go to keep those files from ever surfacing? Online, hashtags erupted, hashtag Doc unlocked the cabinet, hashtag what did Justin see, hashtag Diddy files. But amid the speculation and rage, one emotion stood out: sympathy for Justin. He's not a whistleblower seeking fame. Not a planted witness. Not an activist. He's a son, someone who lived 30 years under his father's shadow, and was suddenly forced to step forward and expose the man once celebrated by the world. And he didn't even try to expose it all. He simply opened one door and left the rest to justice. Justin's brief testimony has taken this trial far beyond abuse allegations. It's made the nation ask, how many other cabinets are hidden in luxury estates? How many invisible locks still protect the powerful? And when a son finds the key, is it an accident or the last chance for the truth to break free? Diddy denies the cabinet ever existed, but he cannot explain how Justin described it in such detail. And when investigators finally opened it, they recovered 17 data disks, 2 notebooks, and 1 mini DV camcorder, battery dead, but the tape inside still intact. The final question in this chapter is no longer what did Diddy do? It's who else was in that room? And if the cabinet was only the beginning, where will this trial end? I washed it 3 times. Used the strongest bleach I could find at Walgreens. But the smell was still there, with blood, bleach, and something that never goes away. When the next part of Justin Dior Combs' testimony was read aloud in court, the entire room shifted, from tense to suffocating. The story was no longer about a cabinet, or hard drives, or secret guest lists. It had crossed into something else entirely, a sensory realm, a physical presence. One where everyone listening began to imagine things they wished they hadn't. The smell of blood. The sting of bleach. And something deeper, something that bleach couldn't erase. According to Justin, the white blanket wasn't kept in a bedroom. It wasn't folded. It wasn't put back in storage. It had been rolled tightly, stuffed into a large fabric bag, and hidden in the garage, behind toolboxes and plastic bins. No one asked why he hadn't given it to police. No one asked why he hadn't burned it. Because he had already answered, I couldn't bring myself to touch it again. If a son who had lived in that house, who had seen everything, still couldn't lay a finger on that blanket, then the only question was, what had happened on it? There were no explicit words, no mention of assault, no confirmation of blood, no accusations. But according to reporters inside the courtroom, Justin's demeanor changed entirely. He clenched his fists. He held his breath. And then he read a few short lines, not as if he was testifying, but as if he was finally saying something he had replayed in his mind 100 times but never dared to speak aloud. That alone was enough for the judge to call a 5-minute recess, not by request from the lawyers, but because someone in the courtroom had fainted after hearing what was said. The questions that followed were inescapable. Who used that blanket? Who was the victim? What happened on that piece of fabric? Why did it reek of blood so deeply that no amount of washing could remove it? And if Justin had been the one to clean it, why didn't he report it? The only possible answer, fear. But fear of what? Of who? Retaliation? Exposure? Or the unbearable weight of the truth? No prior investigation had ever mentioned the blanket. Diddy's homes had been searched multiple times, in New York, LA, Miami. But never the garages. Never the storage rooms. No one thought they mattered. But it was precisely there that Justin had hidden what may be the most tangible piece of evidence yet, a blanket not logged, not filed, not stored in any legal database. It existed only as something no one dared to touch. Following Justin's statement, the prosecutor's office filed a formal motion to search all non-primary areas across Diddy's properties, garages, attics, utility rooms. And immediately after court, Justin surrendered the blanket, white, reeking of bleach, with visible brown discoloration across several areas. The official forensic report has not yet been released, but a source close to the investigation confirmed the lab found human blood molecules, not a match for Justin. That means one thing: there was another victim. Someone who hasn't been named. Someone who never filed a report. Someone not listed in any case file. Someone who might never have spoken up. And someone no one knows whether they're still alive. The white blanket was only the beginning. It was the small square that revealed the nightmare. After Justin's chilling testimony about the smell of bleach and blood that wouldn't wash out, the questions changed instantly. How many incidents have never been reported? How many victims have never spoken up? If not for that blanket, would we have ever known? And worse, how many other white blankets have been burned, buried, or scrubbed until no trace remained? Diddy denied everything. His attorneys claimed the testimony was vague, speculative. But after that moment, the media no longer called it a scandal. They began labeling it a systemic abuse investigation, where the most damning evidence wasn't in digital files, but in ordinary objects: a blanket, a corner of a garage, a bottle of bleach. And Justin only needed one sentence: I once thought about burning it. But then I couldn't bring myself to touch it again. That wasn't weakness. That was evidence of a wound that never healed, and a memory that couldn't be bleached away. On day 31 of the trial, Justin returned to the stand. This time, it wasn't a physical object, it was a diary. I never wrote their name, he said. I only used a symbol, a small square. Once, he admitted, he almost wrote the real name. But then he crossed it out. I don't know why. Maybe. I didn't want to admit they were a person. The courtroom froze. For the first time, people understood, in those parties, names were erased. Victims were assigned numbers. And the person he wrote about on that night was number 3. Justin described the entry. They lay on the floor for nearly 12 minutes, completely motionless. No name. No age. No description. Just a single symbol, a small square. A prosecutor asked, "Why didn't you write the name?" Justin replied, "I didn't dare. And I wasn't even sure it was their real name." At those parties, no one used names. The chill in the room wasn't from anger, it was from something deeper, the stripping away of humanity. When a victim becomes a symbol, it's no longer about isolated crimes. It becomes a system. As one human rights attorney later said, when names are replaced with symbols, it's no longer about guilt or innocence. It's about dehumanization. And that's always the first step toward organized violence. Justin admitted he had returned to that diary page many times, wanting to write the name. But every time, his hand would shake. And he'd strike it out, one single line, quick, sharp, no hesitation. That act, simple as it was, held a haunting weight, not because it was graphic, but because it was familiar. How many people have crossed out something in their journal to avoid facing a truth? But this wasn't heartbreak. It wasn't shame. This was the erasure of a human life by the only person who had seen them. Prosecutors immediately requested the original diary. Justin agreed. It was sealed as evidence. Investigators verified the handwriting, confirmed the ink matched. But more importantly, that small square symbol appeared 7 times. On 7 different dates. That raised a horrifying question. If each square represents a person, are there at least 7 unnamed victims? And if none of them were ever recorded, ever heard, or ever protected, how can justice even begin? No one could have predicted that the downfall of a music empire would begin not with digital evidence, but with a knocking sound at 3:17 a.m. Over 33 days of trial, Justin Dior Combs, the biological son of Sean Diddy Combs, didn't just present facts. His words carved deep into a world built on fame, wealth, and silence. From a hidden cabinet filled with hard drives and tapes, to a white blanket reeking of bleach and blood, to a diary filled with tiny square symbols instead of names, every piece pointed to a system of abuse that had been meticulously hidden. Justin never said the victim's name. He couldn't. And that made the truth even more terrifying, that the trauma was so profound, even the witness couldn't face it. But what stunned the nation wasn't the physical evidence. It was the 3 knocks Justin claimed to hear every night, a signal, he believed, from number 3. Diddy denied everything, yet went silent when his son ended with a single haunting line, "If there's a next life, I just hope it never finds me again." This wasn't an accusation, it was a confession. As more witnesses came forward, businesses cut ties, and the public stopped sharing Diddy's legendary hits, it became clear that this wasn't just about one man. It was about an entire industry's silence, a system that chose to protect reputations instead of people. And so the final question remains, how many more Justins are still out there, trapped in lavish homes, bound by blood, and silenced by fear? And if number 3 is truly gone, who will justice find first, the perpetrator, or those who once turned away? Subscribe, comment, and stay with us as we follow every unfolding chapter of this explosive case. Thanks, see you again, G.